Can't start the video. That's problem number one. Let's see here.
Pretty good. Good. Yeah. I think they should. Yeah. Yes, here. Yeah. How do you say? Well, different.
Where are you writing the body parts? Like it's for like attach my body part.
I got a whole problem with my baby. My wife's like, take the baby and dance me on it with my body. How do you say wing? How do you say staff? How do you say building? Plural sons. Evan, Evan, Benian is plural building. No. Building. Then in building a very similar thing. Evan, and then building is B now.
And then plural is
Ebony.
This one I'm right. The other one, this is on. They have two.
Yeah, I didn't even.
Oh, we
follow
took it one.
Although that other one is in front.
Oh, the other one? Oh, okay. What's that one?
How many? What are the three? What are the three?
It's
All right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Everyone have this book?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Ulum al-Quran. We'll just dive right into it. You can open to the first chapter. So ulum is plural of ilm. What's ilm? Knowledge, right? So ilm is knowledge. Ulum must be a plural of knowledge, right? Knowledges, that's even a word. Of the Quran. So the knowledge of the Quran, or to make it translate a little bit smoother, the science or the sciences of the Quran. Why is it plural? Why is it just called Ilm al-Quran? Why are we calling this class Ulum al-Quran? What's that? There are many sciences. Okay, Quran is one of them, right? Right?
There are many different studies of the Quran.
Many different studies of the Quran. What does that mean?
Like you could study the pattern, like the grammar of the Quran, how it's special, how the way it flows, like the syntax, all those different studies.
Okay, there are different ways of studying the Quran itself, all right?
Sheikh, we can't hear you if you're talking.
There are multiple disciplines inside here. Yes, I am talking.
I can hear you fine.
You can hear me fine? Okay, so who couldn't hear me? Okay, so it tackles all aspects of life, right? Now, you guys, are you getting there? I'm going to reword it for you. You have to learn multiple disciplines in order to be able to access the Quran. Yes, the Quran, has multiple ways in which you can study it. Yes, the Quran covers all aspects of life. That's not what's meant by ulum al-Quran. You also have ulum al-Hadith, for example. The reason is that in order to study the Quran, in order to really know the Quran, you have to study multiple disciplines, right? Some of which are, nahu, grammar, Arabic, right? Arabic. You need grammar. Obviously, you need to know the language itself, the words. You have, for example, morphology. You have balagha, or the art of articulation. I'd even add poetry to this, right? Studying Arabic poetry really does help you understand the Quran, because although you could study grammar and morphology outside of poetry, or disconnected from poetry, what poetry does is, classical Arabic poetry, what it does is allow you to understand the mindset of the people the Quran is initially being revealed to, right? So when the Quran glorifies something or put something down, and you understand the mindset of the people, you better appreciate what the Quran is saying, right? You need to learn asbab al-nuzul, or reasons for revelation, an-nasikh wal-mansukh, abrogation, fiqh, for example, you have to study, etc. So there are multiple disciplines that need to be learned in order for you to access the Quran. That's why it's in plural, ulum al-Quran. Some of these subtopics, or these sub-sciences, we can call them, we'll go over in the course of this book. Others you have in other classes, all right? And then al-Quran, what that is, we'll get to a little bit later. Now, for this course, I don't want us to just memorize the book, and if I ask you a question, you're able to copy paste what you learn in the book. That's not the goal here. I'm not interested in graduating students who know how to read a book, right? Who can quote a book. That's not interesting to me. I'm interested in graduating students who are able to take the information, right, and put it in conversation with life. That's what I want to know. That's what I want from you all. To understand the function of the Quran in your day-to-day life. To understand the value of the Quran in your day-to-day life. If I'm able to do that with you all, then I think I've succeeded. But if you end this year only knowing, what is in the book as pure words, that's it, and you don't know how to implement it, or the value of its implementation in life, then I don't think you've gained much, to be very honest. So put your thinking hats on and conversation. Don't hesitate, I might get the answer wrong. I'm not interested in you all having the right answers. I'm interested in you all having a conversation with me, so that your mindset, your perspective of the value of this information begins to grow. All right. Day one is today. Day, whatever, at the end of this year, I hope you feel the difference between day one and the last day of this school year. Right. And as one of my mentors told me, he said, if you're consistent with me for 6 months, you will feel the difference. And I remember exactly 6 months later, I began to feel the difference. Right. That's what we're looking for here. So with that, why is there religious sciences? Quranic sciences is one of them. There are a bunch of other sciences, ulum hadith, etc. Why do these things exist in the first place? What's the purpose? What's the function?
To preserve.
To preserve the religion. Okay, so to preserve the religion. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he's going to preserve the religion, right? Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafidun. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says himself, he is the one who sent down the Quran, and he is the one who's going to preserve it. So if Allah is going to preserve it, why preserve it? What's your name?
Someone.
Salma, okay.
I think this is a practical way of preserving it. It's not just. This is what it translates into. It's when Allah notice that a lot of things can happen in life. They're the practical or the manifestation of Allah's promises to us. I think this is one of them.
So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he's going to do something, it doesn't just appear. There's an observable, there's something you can observe in how it comes about. Is that what you're saying? And that's 100% right. Right? Now, can Allah make something from nothing? Obviously, it says in the Quran, kun fayakun, be, and it is, right? However, when we look at why we're created in the first place, which we'll dive a little bit into later, why Allah created us, well, there's a reason, and that is for us to get to know Him. And if Allah were to just do things like suddenly, it doesn't give us the opportunity to get to know Him, right? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has structured the universe in a way where there are causes and effects, science and scientists and atheists will come and say, see, because we can explain it, it makes God irrelevant. In the mind of the Muslim, because we can explain it, we know Allah more, and we know Allah exists, right? So while Allah promised to preserve it, the manifestation of that preservation actually happens through us. And that's an honor to us, right? So yeah, part of the sciences of the Quran is to preserve the Quran. Now, what we can kind of infer from this is that if the Quran needs preservation, it begs the question, what are we preserving it from? Corruption, right? Corruption. Well, who's going to corrupt the Quran?
Everyone who's
Pretty much, right? Anyone who disagrees with it, or people who want to use it for their own personal gain, whatever it is, right? So in the mindset of the believer, we're not naive, right? You know, as Americans, when you probably all have gone to the Eastern countries, right? And then you go there and they look at Americans as so naive and like you have no idea what's going on in the world, right? I remember once when I was in Jordan, I was getting some lunch after university, and this group of Americans come in, and a girl wanted to buy a bottle of water, right? And a bottle of water is like 60 of their cents, right? And she heard 6, so she pulled out $6. And the cashier just looking at her is like, I understand you're not from the same country, but this is like an absurd amount of money. So they look at us as though we're like naive, because we become accustomed to, when you want to buy something, you go to the store, it's priced, right? This is what it is, take it or leave it. And you can go to Amazon and compare and all this stuff. It's just take it or leave it. A cashier or an employee is not going to rob you because everything is set in the first place. Mm-hmm. And while that's good, right, it makes things flow easier and simpler, there is another side to it, that is it makes us pay less attention. So the Muslim understands, and we're becoming more accustomed to this, especially in the religious area with all these crazy people popping up on social media. There are people there who want to corrupt the Quran. And we understand this from the lens of, non-Muslims who are butting heads with Islam and Muslims. But where you need to all pay more attention to are Muslims, people who identify as Muslim, but who want to corrupt the Quran, right? So that's one of the reasons. What other function, what do these sciences play? Okay, so to teach us about the Quran religion, but why is it coming in the form of a science, right? Why can't I just teach you tafsir? When we say science, that means something, right? What was your name? Rama. Okay. You want to answer that?
Why is it aspects of life that isn't necessarily like specifically addressed in the Quran, but things that would apply to one person?
Okay, so it's to educate us, right? Teach us about the religion in a methodological way that we can then use to engage life, right? And it's not just randomness. It's not that I need a verse that literally tells me what I literally need to do now, or else I just have no idea how to use the Quran, right? So it provides us with a methodology, but perhaps the way I could word it here is the sciences begin to shape the way we view the world, right? So, for example, philosophers from the Greek times have debated over the essence of the human being, meaning what defines a human being, what part of the human being is definitive of the human being. And there are three schools here. You have the animal school, where you are a body. So the focus is your physical self. The other school is that you are a psychology, your mind. Your thoughts define you, not your body. And number three, you are a soul. Right? Your soul defines you, not your thoughts or your body. Right? Now, in our times today, which of these three do you think is really taking root in the way people view the world? Your mind? Why is that? Okay, I mean, obviously, the people who say that you're a body don't deny the fact that people think differently.
Most people think that we're, I guess, it's psychology, and I mean, evidence would be, I think that I'm such and such, therefore I am such and such, I am this gender, I am this sex, you have to treat me as such. So the psychology is taking dominance.
Right? This idea where you can change your gender simply because you think that way presumes what? You are nothing more than a mind. That's it. Your body is irrelevant. This is where that's coming from, right? And when a person, accepts this idea where I think, therefore I am, Descartes, right? Then what essentially happens to the world is I could change it. I can change it in a limitless way, in an infinite amount of ways, right? Versus the paradigm that the Quran gives us, where it says, no matter what you try and do, there are certain things you cannot change. Period. No matter whether you like it or not, there are certain things Allah has decreed upon you. There's nothing you do about it. As the Prophet ﷺ tells Ibn Abbas, that certain things have been decreed, the pens have dried out, and the papers, the ink has dried. Right? So you can't do anything about it. Like what your gender is. Allah chose you male or female, one or the other. Allah chose that for you. Who your parents are, your ethnicity, where you're born, has nothing to do with you. You have no choice in it. And so this is part of the paradigm. There are certain things you cannot change. Despite how much you might dislike it, or despite how much you might think otherwise, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, right? So when we learn ulum al-Quran, essentially it's giving us certain principles, certain reality that shape the way we approach the Quran, the way we approach hadith, the way we understand its role in our lives, etc. What else? Yes.
The sciences help us navigate the world, particularly in areas where there's issues coming up that didn't exist when the Quran was revealed. For
Mhm.
example, like AI, like what do we do
Sure,
with that?
sure. But that goes into what was just said right now. What else? So by the time we're done with this course, right? Ulum Quran 101, what do you hope to have gained? It's not a trick question, right?
Like a methodology of how to approach the Quran, like he's saying, how to utilize the principles,
Okay.
looking at situations that come up in our lives, and most importantly, how to apply it in our lives as well.
Okay.
When you kind of study like the details and you can kind of like glean more from, your relationship.
Okay. One more person. What do you hope to gain by the end of this course?
To regulate the moods and to regulate these the whims that we see happening, be able to regulate, put control over them.
So what's this course going to do? How is that going to get you there?
Knowing this, knowing what he wants for us, is something that motivates the human being to kind of act upon.
Okay, so knowing you assume that if I know more about the Quran, that somehow that's going to make me better. Right. The hope is, what I'm hearing from you all is the hope is that you understand the Quran more, whether it's in a practical way, in a spiritual way, or whatever, right? Yeah. Why these sciences are there is for us to better understand the Quran. Now I'm going to show you something here. There are various ulums, various sciences that you will go throughout, however many years you take IOK. Part of which is you have Quranic, the Quran, the science of the Quran. What else? Hadith, grammar. What other sciences are there?
Yeah.
Fiqh, right?
Tazkiyah.
And do you also have Tazkiyah course?
No,
Tazkiyah.
Is there a Sirah course?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have Sirah. Anything?
Self grammar.
Sarf? Okay, so yeah, it goes on the grammar. You can say Sarf.
Aqid.
Oh, Aqidah. Right, etc. Why do we study Hadith? What's the main objective of studying Hadith?
Just to better understand the Quran.
How are you going to better understand the Quran by studying Hadith?
Allah says in the Quran, he sent no prophet to explain the Quran completely to us. So I'm going to Quran more, we have to understand Hadith. So we can understand the Quran.
Essentially, the Prophet, as described by Aisha, is what? He's a walking Quran. He is the physical manifestation of the Quran. If you want to see the Quran for what it's meant to do for you, you look at the Prophet, ﷺ, right? How does grammar help us? What's the main function of grammar? Why do we study grammar? You all are bombarded with grammar the first 2 years. And it's so boring, isn't it? Then you think, why is this relevant? Why are you studying all that?
You have to know the language.
Why do you want to understand Arabic? Okay. What about fiqh? A fiqh is attempt to do what? I can't hear you.
Arabic.
Fiqh is Arabic? No. Aside from that, fiqh is legislation. Legislation of what? The Quran, right? Aqidah. Aqidah is what?
Our beliefs.
It's the study of the unknown, essentially. It's the study of the realms of life your senses cannot tangibly observe. Like the study of the akhirah, like the study of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is Allah, like the study of the prophets, like the study of the angels, etc. These are things that are untangible. You can't engage them physically. So what is the only place we can get it from? Quran and Hadith, right? But you get the point. Sarf is to better understand the Quran. Sirah is understanding the Prophet's life. And the greatest, one of the best ways of understanding the Quran is understanding Sirah. Because the Quran is essentially talking to the Prophet over the course of his Sirah life, so to speak. So all of these sciences are an attempt for you to understand the Quran better. It all goes back to the Quran. Islam is the Quran. Everything else functions to help you better understand the Quran, right? So these are some of the functions of the ulums, right? Now, I asked you the question. Again, thinking hats on. Someone might come to you and say all this ulum stuff, ulum al-Quran, ulum al-Hadith, etc., is bid'ah. Familiar with that term? Yeah? It's bid'ah. It's all nonsense. Why? Why are you saying that? Because the companions never studied this stuff. They just went straight to the Quran. The companions are the best generation, right? And we need to emulate them and replicate what they did. So I'm saying, right, that all this stuff is bid'ah. We should throw it in the trash and just get the Quran and just start studying. What's your response to that? What's your name? Sarda. S-A-R-D-A? S-D-R-D. Okay, Sarda.
Because at that time there was a prophet, so whenever they request about or prophet or anything, they were going to ask for prophet. So after he passed away, there was a prophet who asked anything, you know. That's why we have this kind of group.
Okay, so why didn't the companions study or establish these sciences? By the way, my handwriting is really bad. Something that is not legible, just let me know. I'll correct it for you. So one is that the Prophet was there. If they need anything, they just go to the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. All right, what else? What's your name? Tayyib.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Most of these were already understood and given, like the Sahaba, their grammar was already perfect. They already knew, so etc., etc.
They understood it, right? They had access to the Quran by merit of simply speaking their own language. Okay. Now, what does that mean for us? Like, what are you saying in terms of us? Okay, they didn't need it because they had direct access to the Quran. Why do we need it then? Why don't we have access? Right? Essentially, we need kind of crutches. Crutches because we have lost the Arabic language, a classical Arabic language. We don't regularly speak it. We don't understand its rhetoric. We don't understand the sarcasm when the sarcasm is there. We don't understand the depth and the richness, right? Whereas if we're speaking just street English, you know, I might say something, you understand that as a threat, but somebody who English is their second language, they didn't catch it. Does that make sense? Right? There's certain slang, certain ways of saying something that when you're a native speaker of that language, you catch on to it. You get it. I know this person is actually mocking me, even though they didn't say anything of mockery, but the way they're saying it, the context in which they're saying it, they're mocking me. Somebody who is outside that context doesn't catch that, right? So essentially, we need help accessing the Quran. So someone comes to you with that question or that statement. Yeah, I don't believe in all these ulum stuff. It came after the Prophet, after the companions didn't do it. This is your answer. Right? Until you are ready to engage the Quran without these crutches, the ulums are meant to get you to that point. And somebody who just dives into the Quran without any of the knowledge in any of these areas is an utter fool. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they won't be able to engage the Quran. And if they try, it's gonna backfire on them. All right. With that, we can start diving into the content of the book. Now on page XVIII, or 111, or essentially the second page of the introduction. In the middle of the page, the primary objective. You all see that? The primary objective of the Quran is for us to think, ponder, and reflect over its meanings. Right? To think, to ponder, and to reflect over its meanings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, كتاب أنزلناه إليك مبارك ليدبروا آياته وليتذكر أولو الألباب. A Quran that Allah has sent down. He put in it blessings so that you all reflect over its meanings and so that you think about it. All right? What does that mean? What does this mean? Like, I want to think about and reflect over the Quran. What does that really mean? Okay. So I'm going to give you an example here. There are many religious people, practicing Muslims, who have been practicing for a while, going to the masjid, participating in the community, etc. Yet, when they are tested with a simple test, they fail miserably. This is very serious right here, what I'm saying. I want you to pay attention to this. There are people who are practicing Muslims who have been practicing for a while, but in the face of a simple test, they utterly fail. In other words, in the face of a simple test, they're not able to muster enough taqwa to say no. I'm not making this up. I'm not giving you a hypothetical scenario. I'm talking about something that's very common in religiously practicing people. Why does that happen? Is it simply because they didn't think about the Quran?
They have the rituals down. They feel spiritual sometimes. They do the rituals, sometimes they don't. They just
they're consistent.
Yeah, it's in their routine, like the rituals, praying, fasting and stuff, but they don't have it. That's where it ends. There's no like relationship with the Quran and with the Deen in terms of knowing that the Deen is not just the 25 minutes that it takes in a day to pray.
They're practicing and applying every sunnah. Rama? They're native Arabic speakers.
And like apply it into.
Okay, let's take it up a notch. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا فَأَتْبَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ. Allah gives us the example of someone who Allah has given knowledge of revelation to, meaning a scholar. فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا, they shed it. Allah gave them the knowledge, but they just shed it, like a snake sheds skin. I mean, meaning it did not benefit them, and they followed their desires. There are scholars of this ummah, some you'll come across, some you'll hear about, who you have no doubt in the competence of their knowledge, yet they will fall into scandalous behavior. What happened there? The shaitan is so powerless. The shaitan can't do anything except tell him or encourage him, hey, do this. What happened? Arrogance? Could be, right?
No taqwa.
Why didn't they have taqwa? They had knowledge. They're clearly thinking about it. Diseases of the heart, right? Arrogance being the number one disease of the heart. What happened? This should always haunt you, by the way. This right here should always haunt you because it's real and it's darn scary. Why did they favor the dunya? In other words, if they're thinking about the Quran, they're pondering the Quran, they're reflecting over the Quran, they are teaching the Quran, so they're getting the spiritual, we would think they're getting the spiritual nourishment, yet they prefer the dunya. Look, what happened there? I saw a hand in the back.
Doing it to show off.
Okay, which is another major disease of the heart. They're doing it to show off. It was never about it. That's all true, right? How do we avoid this? Do you think simply thinking about the Quran and reflecting and listening to lectures is going to make you a good Muslim? Do you think graduating from IOK is going to make you a good Muslim? It gives you an advantage. Let's be real here. Don't disenroll. Is the point here, right? Okay, so let's reverse the conversation now. And let's look at the success stories, the companions. Think with me for a second here, who the companions are. Forget the title companion. Think about them in terms of their background. These are a bunch of Bedouins, right? They are a bunch of Bedouins who did not have any access to educational institutions, political institutions, to scientific institutions, to anything. These were a bunch of people in the most uninteresting part of the world at that time, just living their day-to-day life, looking for food to survive. Yet in 23 years, they became so powerful, so enriched with Iman, that when the king, the Caesar of Rome, offered a companion, well, I don't remember his name. He's not a senior companion. This is just an average companion. When the Caesar of Rome offered him half of his kingdom and to marry him, his daughter, he did not hesitate to say no, even though the other choice was death. I want that. And I hope you want that too. They got there in a way. There was a way they got there. It's not random, right? And I promise you, it wasn't because they were sitting there thinking about the Quran, reflecting over the Quran day in, day out. That's not their secret. What was the secret? It's not really a secret, but how did they get there? Adam.
We live the Quran.
What do you mean they lived the Quran?
They use the knowledge that they learned from it, and they use that in their life to live a certain way.
To live a certain way, right? They lived the Quran. Of course, in order to live the Quran, you have to reflect over it. But knowledge is meaningless unless it actually manifests into certain action. Unless it influences your perception, your insight, the way you view the world. They lived the Quran. They didn't just think about it, right? In their mind, they weren't thinking about what did this scholar say about this verse, and how does it compare to another scholar, and what's their evidences, and all this academic stuff, right? Study it. It's important to know, but that's not the secret to Iman, right? Knowing what scholars said and their opinions and their evidences is a very small part of your relationship with the Quran, and that's only meant for you to be able to better understand the Quran. The true essence of the Quran is living it. And I want to add something to this. It's not simply implementing what you learn about the Quran. It's also just living life, being out there. It's living life. Because the Quran is a book for what? It's a book for life. The companions weren't sitting in their homes reading books day in, day out. What were they doing? They were living life. I don't mean YOLO style. I mean, they were doing their things. They met with people, they spoke to people, they took on their responsibilities, they were in business, they got into war, they had to do politics, they have to reconcile with family. They lived life. And because they were living life, they were in a constant need for answers. How do I deal with this problem? What's the solution to that problem? How do I resolve this issue? And they kept going back to the Quran. And they applied it. That's the essence right there. Right? So if you want a relationship with the Quran, you have to live life. And that means getting out of your comfort zone. It means talking to people you normally don't want to talk to. It means your kafir neighbor, I don't say that like in a derogatory way, but the neighbor that you don't want to talk to, or you don't want to engage, or you don't want to enter their house, or want them to enter your house because, ew, they're non-Muslim. That's actually reducing your ability to understand the Quran and to connect to the Quran. I mean, 13 years of the prophethood, right? 13 years of prophethood was what exactly? The prophet, engaging non-Muslims, having non-Muslim family members. How do we deal with that, right? And the Muslim community today wants to be always comfortable, and so we close out, non-Muslims. We don't want to talk to them. Like, no, we can't deal with these people. We just want our own, Islamic cities now, alhamdulillah. Nothing wrong with that. But if the idea here is we're going to isolate ourselves, that didn't work before 9/11. It's not going to work again, right? So you have to live it. You have to live it. And this is why I always encourage young ones to get into business. Get into business for many reasons. Among those reasons is you are constantly being thrown things at you never expected. And now you're going to have to get in your A game thinking, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? Right? Because if you've never been tested with a desire before, you're very vulnerable to it. But when you get out there, you're out of your comfort zone, you are bound to hit one of those desires. And then you have to deal with it. The first time you might stumble, you might fail. But the second time you won't. And the third time, even less. And now you've actually built taqwa because you live life. And therefore, going back to that example of the individual, the practicing Muslim, who reads the Quran and does his salah and goes to the masjid and all this stuff, but fails in front of the first test they are tested with, even though it might be small, my guess is that this person has isolated themselves, created an artificially protected environment. And then when they're actually tested with something, they have no idea what to do. They're completely ill-equipped. They're unprepared. right? So isolation is not going to give you better access to applying the Quran or understanding the Quran or dealing with the Quran. Until you meet the pharaohs of the world, you're not going to appreciate the story of Musa. Until you meet the liars and the conners, you're not going to appreciate how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described people like Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl and Walid ibn Mughira, right? And when these things happen, you begin to enrich your relationship with the Quran. And I'll give you an actual example. Take someone like Tommy Robinson. You all know this guy? This buffoon? Never heard of him? Oh man, you guys aren't taking the UK dawah, bros. Something like that. Tommy Robinson is this supposed far-right guy who's very anti-Muslim, right? And he's always bashing Islam and Muslims and arousing anger towards the Muslims and all of this stuff. You know, the UK riots recently, right? He's the one who fomented that and directed it, right? He's the guy, right? And, you know, don't underestimate our brothers and sisters in the UK, mashallah. These people were raised on the streets pretty much, mashallah. So they know how to deal with these buffoons. And so one of them says, Tommy Robinson is a citizen of Ireland. He's not a UK citizen. He's a citizen of Ireland, lives in Spain. His personal life is in disorder, and. So you sit there looking at the profile of this individual. He comes off as, I'm this loyal Englishman. All I care about is England, and England needs to be great. The same, you know, nonsense that we hear here, right, from the MAGA people. He's saying it there, but he's not even an English person. He's not even living in England, and he's going about promoting himself this way. You sit there looking at this person, like, this person is just, he's insane. Like, there's something off in his style and strategy. And then you remember the verses, right? هَمَّازٍ مَّشَّاءٍ بِنَمِيمٍ مَنَّاعٍ لِلْخَيْرِ مُعْتَدٍ أَثِيمٍ عُتُلٍّ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ زَنِيمٍ. How Allah describes, you know, I believe Al-Walid al-Mughira. This person is constantly gossiping, backbiting. They are rude. They are lame, and you see, wow, it's as though Allah is describing this guy right here, Tommy Robinson. Now your appreciation for these verses become a lot more meaningful. That's not going to happen until you actually face someone like that, as discomforting as it is, right? So we want to think, ponder, and reflect over its meanings, but we have to understand the function of that. That's not the end right there, but rather it's a means to the true purpose of the Quran that's building you, making you stronger. And a strong human is one whose decisions are based on what is correct. And when they are faced with something that is wrong, they're able to stand up against it, or at least deter it, or not fall into it. And then in the paragraph after, it says, it is difficult to do so, meaning to think and ponder and reflect over the meaning of the Quran for a few reasons. One is that most Muslims don't know the Arabic language, right? So the Arabic language is the key to the Quran. In fact, it's the key to all of the sciences. The stronger you know the Arabic language, the more access you have to the knowledge. And then secondly, another reason is that we as Muslims tend to have a rather shallow understanding of our own religion, right? We have a shallow understanding of our own religion, and at the end of this paragraph, Sheikh Farhan calls this the crisis of, that's what's meant by the crisis of knowledge. We have a shallow understanding of our religion. So the example of that guy that I gave you, his understanding of the religion is shallow. It's shallow. It's just surface level. I pray, I fast, you know, I don't lie, right? All of that is important. So I'm not downgrading it when I say this is shallow, but it's only the kind of the first layer. It's easy to pray 5 times a day, right? Just the fact of the matter, it's easy to pray 5 times a day. It's easy to fast Ramadan. It's easy to give, you know, zakah once a year. It's easy to go do umrah. These aren't hard things. And so they don't automatically translate into strong taqwa. It'll give you an amount of taqwa, but it's not going to give you that companion level of taqwa. You need a strong, rich understanding of the Quran. And a strong, rich understanding of the Quran does not mean, underline this and highlight it, does not mean you can quote all the scholars and what they said about a verse. That has its function, but that function is not in terms of taqwa. And there are many stories of a scholar who has a conversation with a common individual, and that common individual displays an amount of taqwa, an amount of insight and knowledge of Allah that even impresses that scholar. Like the scholar, like, I didn't even know, I didn't even see it this way. I'll give you one example, a contemporary scholar, very big out in Morocco. He says he was, it was a very hot summer that year, and it was a very hot day, and he was walking by the beach. And he comes across an elderly man who's just kind of sitting there. And so, the scholar opens up some small talk, Assalamu alaikum, wa salam, how are you? How's things? And the scholar comments and says, man, it's been a hot summer. And he said that man replied with the following: Lillahi khalqun siwak. That's it, 3 words. Lillahi khalqun siwak. Allah has a creation other than you. What does that mean?
Some other creation they might give the heart.
There are other creatures who prefer the heat. They need the heat to survive. Or certain fruits need the heat to ripen. Right? In other words, the scholar said, I was taken back. Like, I never saw it that way. In other words, he's commenting and saying, Allah is the Lord of everyone, not just you. So when we say, oh, it's so hot, what are we really saying? This is inconvenient for me, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if you say that you're somehow a bad Muslim or anything like that. But there's a presumption there that, I wish it was different because that's convenient for me. It's self-absorbed right there. Versus this elderly man, this common person who understood that, Allah, by making it hot, is doing something for another creation, whom he is the Lord of as well, right? That's deep right there. So this crisis of knowledge is caused by a shallow understanding of the Quran, of the religion. So how do we prevent that? I don't want a shallow understanding of the Quran. I'm sure you don't want a shallow understanding of the Quran, or else why are you here? Right? Coming 7:30 in the morning, driving from who knows where to study in a seminar or a seminary that you might be doing just for your personal life. Maybe you're not thinking of a career in teaching Islam or anything like that. You're just here because I want to learn, right? So the last thing you want is to come out of this with an equally shallow understanding, right? So how do we prevent this shallow understanding? How do we get out of it? Okay, I mean, living the Quran, sure, we can add that. Rama. Okay. What else? Adam?
Sincerity.
Sincerity. Okay. Isa. Oh, I'm sorry. Your dad is Adam. Yeah. Sorry. Isa. Thank you for correcting me.
Getting help when you get stumped. I think a lot of times I read ayahs I don't understand. I'm just satisfied with not understanding it, but actually going to a teacher and asking, what does this mean?
It's such an IOK, orientation day. Sure. I mean, you can do that. But again, do you think if I answer your question that somehow if you come to me and say, what is the meaning of this verse? And I just quote to you a bunch of scholars. Are you really going to have a deeper understanding of that verse? You have an understanding of that verse. Is it really deep? Versus you coming with a personal problem, a personal dilemma, and then I quote a verse and say, well, maybe this addresses your situation. Now that's okay. That's deep, right? So why does it make it deep? What happens there? When I quote a verse, when you find a verse in the Quran that resolves a problem in your life, why does now that verse why does it give you a deeper understanding of that verse? What is it? You start personally resonating, personal connection. Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala says the following in the Hadith al-Bukhari. He says, had it not been for 2 verses of the Quran, I would not narrate a single hadith to you all. The verse is about concealing knowledge. He said, I feel a responsibility as per the meaning of these verses to narrate the hadith that I have learned from the Prophet. Had these 2 verses not been there, I would not say anything. He didn't say I would not have collected hadith. He said I just wouldn't narrate it to you all. What do you understand from Abu Hurairah? Why did he collect hadith?
He was looking for something for himself.
To benefit himself. What's your name? Hidayah. To benefit himself. Your goal from learning, whatever you learn in your life, is to benefit yourself. It's not about teaching others. I promise, I say this as a teacher. It's not about teaching others, even though there's a lot of joy in teaching others, a lot of ajr, a lot of reward in teaching others, but that's not the primary goal, right? To benefit yourself. It's for your own growth. How do I create, or how do I get a personal connection with the Quran? Right. One is, as we just mentioned, living the Quran or using it to navigate your personal life. Because now it's personal, right? Every time you pass by that verse that consoled you in a time of difficulty, that showed you how to deal with a problem, that helped you resolve a situation, helped you get through something, I promise you, every time you pass by that verse, you will feel it. That's a connection right there. If we were to go to a companion, and point out a verse in the Quran and say, tell me about this verse, how do you think they're going to answer? Imagine this for a second. You go to someone like, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Actually, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is a scholar, so he might give you a scholarly answer. Let's say you go to Abu Bakr. And so Abu Bakr, tell me about this verse. Just go to a random verse. How do you think he's going to answer you? From his life experience. So yeah, when that verse came down, we were going through X, Y, and Z. And when it came down, this is how it helped us resolve it. She went 4 years back, 5 years back. I've been teaching Maryam since the first year I came to IOK. She's somehow still here. I don't know how it works. All right. He's going to tell you, we were going through X, Y, and Z when this came down. And when it came down, it did this for us. That's a deep understanding of the verse. Because now any other time in his life where he goes through something similar, not only does he have the personal fortitude to be able to deal with it without the stress, right? He knows where the solution is. And when you see the Quran as solving your problems, now the Quran becomes what to you? Becomes valuable to you. You see, studies show that people's leaving of religion in general has nothing to do with theology. It has nothing to do with, what the religion is saying, but has more to do with the question of how is this relevant to my time today? If the Quran or the Bible or whatever cannot solve my problems, what's the point? If I don't gain anything from it, what's the value? Right? And maybe you at a personal level have asked this question, especially if you have maybe more practicing parents who, as a result of you have to pray and you have to fast and you have to do this and you have to do that, you felt confined by the Quran, incapable of building yourself in public life. Well, you might feel that the Quran is not only not giving you any value, but it's actually doing the opposite. That's a crisis of faith right there, right? So part of that personal connection is learning how it is valuable to you, why the value it provides you. And you're not going to get that value by just simply studying books. You're going to get that value by living life, that personal connection, right? What else? How do we create that personal connection? Sanda. That's kind of the first step. I've learned the language. You have hundreds of millions of people who speak Arabic. It's their native tongue. They know exactly what it's saying. Yet they don't have that personal connection. How do we build a personal connection with the Quran, right? And it's in the context of this idea of crisis of knowledge, which essentially translate or means that Muslims have a shallow understanding of the Quran. Spending time with it. Okay, what's quality time?
So one of my we genuinely spend time. I'm not just something that's going to help me but something that is like this is something I'm going to spend an hour today with, or 2 hours today, whatever your time allows, and genuinely spending that time with it in a way that's easy to do.
Okay, this is great. So what Maryam is saying is that you have a responsibility of developing a love for the Quran, right? And how you do that is actually personal, because people have different love languages. So Maryam's love language is quality time. That's why she spends no quality time with me. She's always out of my classes. I'm sorry, I always had to tease her. For her, it's quality time. Maybe it's the same for you. What are the other love languages? You know them off the top of your head? Yeah. Gift giving, okay? Whatever it is, you have to develop that love for the Quran, right? How you do that actually requires you to get to know yourself. And this is the point. If you want a personal connection with the Quran, you have to know yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, you don't know what the Quran means to you. As one person puts it the following way. You have a map, right? To navigate. You're in Death Valley. And when you enter Death Valley National Park, they give you a map. There's no GPS there, there's no internet connection there. You need that map to get out of there alive, right? Because you have no idea where you are except through this map. The map, however, could show you where things are, but how do you know where you are on that map? See what I mean here? You have a map, but you need to know where you are on this map in order to be able to navigate it. Because if the map is like this, you think you're here, but you're actually here, you're done, right? The map is meaningless. So what do you need along with that map? compass. So you know at least which way you're facing, right? You have to look around you to see what are the landmarks. Okay, that's a big mountain, right? It's the tallest mountain in this area. It means, you know, it looks like it's this mountain because it's on the map. This mountain X is the tallest mountain, right? So similarly, the Quran is that map. The compass is you. If you don't know where you are in your own life, you don't know what the Quran is telling you. You don't. And as Americans, we have this problem. Western ideology has, you know, mushed our brains, our perception of ourselves, of life, of the world, in ways that is damaging, right? But if we understand that, we have now more access to the Quran because we know where we are. You know, if I'm just starting to practice, there are different surahs, different verses that are going to resonate with me more. Or the way I begin to approach the surahs is going to be different than if I'm someone who's been practicing for decades. So you need to know yourself. And then the more you know yourself, right, the more you know that love language, you know how to connect with the Quran, you know how to make the Quran relevant to your life. So in the end, the Quran was given to who? Human beings. For what? To guide the human being. If you don't know what the human experience is, the Quran just, even if you know the language, you don't know what it's saying, right? Now, Sheikh Burhan says that this is perhaps the greatest crisis affecting the entire Muslim world. Is it? Is this crisis of knowledge really the greatest crisis affecting the entire Muslim world? In other words, if we resolve this crisis, meaning everybody becomes, mashallah, very strong in their understanding of the Quran, our problems are going to end? A lot of people think, yeah. Are they wrong? How many times have you heard, if you have taqwa, Allah will give you help? I mean, there are administrations who create an entire political paradigm off of this. In tansurullah yansurkum. If you assist the religion of Allah, Allah is going to assist you. And they're not here today. They were defeated. Is it? Are the problems of the Muslim ummah going to be resolved if we resolve the crisis of knowledge? It's definitely a start, right? We're not going to say it's nothing. Remember, thinking cap. It could be right. I want you all to say what you think. Get comfortable with that. What's your name?
Grant.
Grant?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember hearing, I think it's Tribute to Ali, and somebody asked him something about, like, is the answer to the Quran and everything? And then he said, he basically said, could you bake something or something like that? And then he showed the verse where Allah says, like, ask those who know. And so, like, if you apply the Quran in this sense, that you're looking at it as a paradigm and you're constantly changing your values to align with it, you're looking at the world in a realistic sense, you're acting according to the correct values, then eventually, inshallah, you're going to have success. So in that way, the crisis of knowledge means like aligning ourselves to the truth, conducting ourselves appropriately, taking the right actions. Yeah, you're going to end up being successful.
Okay, so let me tell you this, Grant. Or let me ask you this. If the Muslim world, the political leadership of the Muslim world were to be replaced now with scholars of the faith, will our situation become better? Meaning Sisi is gone. Yeah, yes, please. You can't get any lower than him. I understand that. Sisi's gone. Who else? Bashar al-Assad is gone. You know, I don't know who's in Lebanon. I don't even understand Lebanese politics. It's so bizarre, right? And all of a sudden you get Sheikh so-and-so and Sheikh so-and-so and Sheikh so-and-so just to be, you know, a little bit woke. And is the world going to become the Muslim Ummah going to become better and stronger?
People who live in the country also.
Well, now the sheikhs are running the country. The religious scholarship is running the country.
Also, they knowledge what they're believing in. As countries are more complex, many people living there.
Right?
Often they accept Islam and all these women live in.
Yeah, but Grant is saying that, you know, if you have more knowledge of the Quran, that means you know how to act better.
We people with ilm, like the person in
Right.
Morocco, you know, like if everybody really has ilm, not just scholars.
Yeah, and
Knowledge, like knowledge of God and awareness of what's going on in the world. If you have people like that in leadership and then followers, you know, Ali said, people complained to Ali, they said, what's wrong with you? And he said, Umar and Abu Bakr and Uthman had me as followers, today I have you. So,
Mhm.
you know, they need the right followers as well.
sure. I mean, that's a whole different topic. I love it, but it's a different topic. Trying to remember your name is Hidayat, right? Okay. Would it get better? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's your name? Saad. Go ahead, Saad. Okay, so you say it'd get worse. Okay. All right. One more person. Sanma.
It's just going to go wrong with what you said. They talked about the life experience. Because we've seen it in history, like whether it was Salahuddin or most recently, we're seeing Egypt. These people were of knowledge, they were, you know, somewhat scholarly, but they weren't able to handle the people, they weren't able to handle the power. So they really needed that element.
It's not only they didn't know how to handle the people, they completely ignored them. Right? I personally think it'll get worse. I think it'll get worse. You don't have the theory craft here. Look at the past. Salah ad-Din, Nur ad-Din were wonderful, right? But they weren't the head scholars. They weren't the head scholars. And when you actually analyze their political strategies, they did apply certain pretend. Like Nur ad-Din would sleep in a tent so that the religious class, look at his taqwa, look at his zuhud. It's like it's a play, because Nur ad-Din, again, this doesn't demean Nur ad-Din. Nur ad-Din is playing the role that he's responsible to play, and that is to manage people. And the religious class can damage society because of their shallow understanding, or because of their, even scholars who have this, you know, if you just have taqwa of Allah, everything's going to become better. It's not the way it works. It's not the way it works, right? You need strategy, you need skill, you need to be perceptive, you need to see what position you are in, what you can do, what you can't do, how do I put myself in a better position, right? And so, not to prolong this conversation, no doubt the crisis of knowledge is a crisis, right? But is it the greatest crisis? Maybe, maybe not. But what I want to ask you really, who here participate in college protests? Yeah. Many of you, right? What do people say when the religious leadership doesn't show up? Hmm? What's a lot? What do you mean by that?
There's less filter on. There's more chaos, more. I feel like there's moral corruption.
Okay, so without that religious guidance, then those who are trying to act don't act in the best way. Definitely, right? What else? What do people say? What do Muslims say when they don't see their leaders coming? They don't care. Right? So if there is a crisis of knowledge, is it really a crisis of the average Muslim doesn't know the fiqh of salah and the fiqh of zakah? Or is the true crisis when the religious leadership who has studied the Quran but doesn't show up to when the ummah needs them to show up? Is that really the crisis? Because what did they benefit from all that knowledge if they're not using it for anything? Right? When a khatib does not know how to make a khutbah about Palestine, 10 months pass, not a single word about it. Now what do people say? You're out of touch. You're irrelevant, which goes exactly against what we're trying to do here, right? That personal connection, living the Quran. So the greatest examples of religious leadership and understanding of the Quran in terms of scholarship are the companions. The companions weren't behind closed doors studying and teaching only. When battle came, they rose. They had their swords in their hands and their shields in their left hands, right? When the community needed something, they attended, they were there, right? After the companions, you think of someone like Abdullah ibn Mubarak. Read this man's life. He's of the greatest scholars of our history. He wasn't behind closed doors 24/7. Rather, he would split his time. 1 year he would study, 1 year he would be out in the battlefield. Right? You look at Abdullah ibn Mubarak. You look at Ibn Taymiyyah. This man, he does not lack knowledge. But this man was on the field. Right? This is the fruit of scholarship, action. So knowledge is meant to equip you with the ability to deal with life. This is what we're doing here. All right. So the true crisis of knowledge is not implementing what you know to be Quran and Sunnah. That is a crisis of faith right there. And it starts with religious leadership. And so as you grow in your knowledge, you also need to grow in your participation in life. And you do your thing, by the way. Different people are passionate about different things. Some people are feisty, they like the confrontation. They should do that. Other people are not like that, but they like the community work. They like the charity work. You need to be there, right? So do your best. I mean, in the end, we're human beings. There are time constraints. So I'm not saying go and criticize somebody when they don't show up. Somebody who never shows up, you know, they only have themselves to blame. Well, I don't have time. Make time to what this is your responsibility. Well, I don't know how to talk about this issue. We'll learn how to talk about it. Well, I'm afraid, you know, I might be attacked. And, you know, you're more afraid of them than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. Yeah.
Like, what if the people who are not going to these protests, instead of spending their time in dua, making dua, Allah helps people, you say Palestine, instead of what these protests.
The Prophet ﷺ met his enemies in battle and then made dua. He lined up his army, waited for the enemy, and then he made dua. Right? Dua is important, but it's not the way we resolve problems. The ummah didn't, oh my God, Quraysh is coming to siege us. Let's go ahead and make dua. No, they built a trench, man. Then they say, okay, alaykum bid-du'a. This answer that we hear so often, Sheikh, I have this problem. Oh, just make dua. Sheikh, I have a problem. My husband is abusing me. Just be patient, Jannah is for you. This is the answer of somebody who does not know the answer. Trying to get it off their shoulders without feeling guilty. Right? And I don't mean to demean anyone. That's not the goal here. I'm talking to you to get you all ready for this. But we have to take responsibility. Okay? The reason the Ummah is in the situation it is now is because 2, 3, 4 generations ago, they became more preoccupied with ethnic, nationalities than the Islamic identity. Because they became lazy in actually pursuing Islamic goals, and they just started to pursue, Western, aesthetics. Who here has gone to the museum in Turkey of the last Ottoman Sultan, his abode? Not what it's called. So in Turkey, there's the last castle or the last president Sultan palace of the Ottoman Empire. They turned it into a museum. You gone to it, right? What is it? I don't know what it is. I forgot what it's called. It's on the Bosphorus.
Okay, no one.
That one. Okay, I went there, right? I went to that museum. What's in that museum? It's all Western things. They got this fork from France, and this spoon from Italy, and these plates are from Spain, and all this stuff. Is that the role of the Sultan? And is that the only thing he left? Obviously, that's not the only. He has a long legacy that we're very proud of, right? The idea is when Muslims don't take a stand, these things happen. The American Muslim community is taking a stand. I'm going to be very clear here. Right? We are taking a stand, and I'm optimistic that Allah is going to reward us for that stance. But my point here is, as somebody who's seeking knowledge, how do you really reach that depth you came here for? And the answer isn't behind the closed doors of IOK classrooms. The answer is out there in the world, taking this information and benefiting others with it. That's how it works. All right. Okay, I believe at 9 o'clock we have the, is it here or? This is 401? Okay. Let's see here, we got anything else for this chapter? All right, so that concludes the introduction. Next week, we will go into chapter 1, bidnillahi ta'ala. Any questions while we wait?
What's that mention?
So there's I guess a week-long program with Dr. Akram Nadwi, right? We'll be going over the introduction of Sahih Muslim with you all. So that'll be every day this week from 9 to 1. Yeah.
Just something you would mind me, so I was asking you about the you guys, how you can put more love in. And you really mind to be there, just do your recovery. So like a friend and I have been really
Yes.
when you are supposed to speak, you're supposed to love, I'm gonna put other than this, I think that's very good for the safety. And then on my voting ballot, so if I don't wanna vote for any, this person I put, she was sitting down, so I was just going to vote.
Yes.
What's your response to people that say like, oh, protests are filled with a lot of now, previously, and something that say, and then because of it, I'm not putting it in line. Could be the one obviously in America, they're very, make everybody move, I think it's possible.
So I would tell them, okay, then don't come, please. Right? We don't need that attitude there. But a more serious answer is, I would ask them when the Prophet ﷺ was still in Mecca, what would he see while he was praying by the Kaaba? What?
Naked women.
He'd see people doing tawaf naked. 360 idols around the Kaaba that say, oh, no, there's too much munkar going on around the Kaaba. I'm not going to pray there. I'm going to go ahead and pray at home. Again, it's the shallowness. It's a misuse of religious knowledge. It's an incorrect use, understanding of it. Nobody's telling you to stand next to a girl. Go stand next to a man. And what about all the grocery stores you go to? Oh, is it haram to stand in the line because there are women there? It's mixing. What else?
I just want like what to do if he were there right now, like.
Always, that's the best question you can ever ask yourself. What would the Prophet ﷺ do in this situation? If you come across a hadith that guides you, alhamdulillah, fantastic. If you haven't, go learn. Always the best question you can ask. You can never go wrong there. What would the Prophet do on his life? Can you send us a digital copy of the book while we are waiting for our books to ship? I don't have a digital copy, so you can ask Sister Sarah.
Did you say we have a class here at 1 o'clock?
Yeah. It's a special thing.
So all the regular classes are.
So the second period this week is canceled for this, I guess. If I understood correctly. I'm only here 1 day a week, so.
Do we not have our Arabic exam today?
Oh, year one doesn't, right? Year one isn't part of this. Oh yeah, you're still too young. So what do they do now? Is that?
Did everyone finalize their office hours? Or are you guys all?
My office hour is Mondays from 11:30 to 12:30. Right.
Okay, so right.
But if you want an office hour with me, get it quick, because people are always taking it to discuss their life problems with me. It's important, yeah, because now you always have it coming in your mind when you need some help. I mean, you don't need to know Arabic to memorize the Quran, obviously, but you need it to understand it, definitely. Definitely, that's what we're doing here, right? Other questions? Gentlemen, we're not done. Other questions? Yes. Not masajid, some religious people. They'll
You said that they fell or something?
ISIS said they waged war against the world, quoting this verse.
Oh.
I'm sorry, even the Muslim Brotherhood did the same thing. And they were overthrown. Right?
They didn't take like any action.
No, it's not that simple. They could have been people of taqwa, but if you do not act correctly, well, Allah has a system in play. Right? People, there's just certain if somebody attacks America, what's going to happen to them? They'll be wiped off the face of the earth, right? Like what they did in Iraq and you're not in the position, you don't have the power. You can have all the iman. If you don't have the means, you're not, that's a sunnah of Allah. That's how Allah created it. Hence in the Quran, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَأَعِدُّ لَهُمْ مَسْتَطَعْتُ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ. Prepare power. You can't just go and the Prophet, when you see his strategy in military, there's strategy. He didn't just rush head on. right? And that's Rasulullah. People come and say, yeah, but the companions were 12,000 against the 100,000 Persians, right? If you have the iman of the companions, bismillah, go, show us your stuff. We don't have that. And number two, the companions were incredibly skilled in military battle. They had decades of experience, decades, and they could deal with the weather and the climate and the harsh conditions. And there's a YouTube channel called, I think, Kings and Generals. They actually show you how these battles played out. How the Battle of Badr, how the Battle of Qadisiyah and Yarmouk. They show you what the strategy was, how their strategy. It's not just a bunch of random people saying, Bismillah, yo, come on, let's go, let's get our stuff, pick up whatever scraps you have. Let's go with our Minecraft swords and we're gonna, defeat the world. Which is not the way it works, right? And even Muslims in America, we have to be humble to where we understand what our position is. What our strengths are, what are our weaknesses. Not butt heads with people we shouldn't be butting heads with, even if they are evil. Until we're ready to, right? So it's not pacificity. It's about, okay, if we're not ready to deal with something, then our role now is to get ready to deal with it, prepare ourselves.
Going back to the dua question, we're feeling like, especially with happening some of the women, but they should do dua. When they have to take a stand, they have to.
Yeah, you have to take a stand, right? Now, there might be a situation where you have nothing but dua. Okay? But that's not the situation you're in. All right, so if you all want to take a break until the crew gets here. Yeah. If you want to take a break, a restroom, get water, whatever. I don't know whenever let's essentially start. No, it's at 9. Is it at 9 or 9:30?
9:30.
9:30. Oh, we'll get back here. I'm gonna say it. Yeah, this is last year. All right. So if you want to take a 5-minute break, we'll start back at 9:12. I thought it said 9 o'clock in the flyer. Right?
Oh,
What's their cost?
Yes, there's 90 of you.
I think she said it's gonna be another room. That's what.
Okay, I'm confused now.
No, I don't get it. You know this.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say.
Sorry.
Say it again. Yeah. But it's put it in. So it's press the button. Thank you. I guess we don't look. Thought I brought it.
All right, Bismillah. So sorry about the confusion. I'm supposed to teach you till 9:30, and then I don't know what you all do. All right, anyway. So in terms of the content of this class, exams, coursework, etc. Most or all of the first semester will be this book. All right, I want to have a lot of conversations with you all, though the book is short. I want to have a lot of conversations with you all and make sure that we're able to apply, what the content of this book instead of just knowing it. And then second semester, we start shifting into the Quran itself, the shorter surahs of the Quran. In terms of coursework, I don't assign homework or quizzes. I just don't have the time to keep up with all of that. And so you'll have a midterm and a final, right? So the same week of midterm week, same week of final week, you'll have those two exams. And once we get closer to exam date, I can kind of give you maybe a glimpse of how I ask questions and whatnot. The exam will most likely be in the form like Google Forms. Just helps me organize everything. How many questions, etc. We can talk about that closer to the time of the exam. If I believe the rule is if you live within 30 miles of IOK, you are expected to be on site. All right. I understand every now and then you might need to take a day off, you're sick, whatever, fine. But you know, what I see now in terms of numbers, what I expect to see throughout the year. All right. So we're going to be, I believe the instructors are going to be more strict this year than we have in previous years when it comes to in-person attendance. So do make an effort to be here, and the expectation once again is that you are here on site. Okay. Any questions about that? Yes. You don't have to email me if you're going to be absent, right? Other shuyukh like it, I don't care for it. So long as you're not, you know, missing 3 weeks in a row or something like that. But if you're sick 1 week, you don't have to tell me. I'll assume that you're sick or you have some other responsibility. Just stroll in whenever you want, my friend. Adi did that, no problem. Be on time.
I needed to hear that.
The only time I ever got in trouble in school is when my brother kept getting me to school late. It's his fault. Any other questions? All right, so for the remainder of the 15 minutes, we'll go over chapter 1, or at least part of it. Now, there are 3 kind of components of chapter 1, kind of opening the doors of the rest of the book, and that is definition, subject matter, purpose, and objective. What are the primary goals of this book? One is definition. Right? So in the next chapter, we go over the term Quran, but here it just goes over ulum al-Quran, which we already went over. Right? Why is it sciences in plural instead of just science? What does that mean, etc. But I want to add something here. You know, now that Muslims are becoming increasingly integrated in American society, and you have many Muslim professors in the academy. Now, as someone who spent some years in the academy, in higher education or in graduate school, there are certain things that I notice about academia that I can compare with Islamic scholarship. What you'll hear when a professor wants to present his or her research or paper or literature, there are certain check boxes that need to be checked in order for this to be a appropriate research, right? In order for it to get published by some journal or whatever. One is that there needs to be complexity in what's being presented. Meaning, if what you are saying is not seemingly complex, they assume that you didn't think about it enough. So you could take something that technically is very simple, but if you put it in the academic world, they'll overcomplicate it, right? Like, for example, the question of what is the Quran? What is if I were to ask you this, what is the Quran? What would your answer be? The word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In academia, no, you can't. It has to be complicated. What is the Quran? Is it really the word of God, or is it the translation of what people understood or thought God was saying. They overcomplicate it, right? Islam isn't like that. In fact, in Islam, the principle is if something cannot be understood by the average person, it's not part of the Sharia. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. Allah has made reflecting over the Quran easy. So will you not reflect? Also, something you'll find about academia is that one of the boxes that need to be checked off is that you have read both sides of the argument, which is perfectly fine, right? And then third is even the side that you agree with, you have to show that there are some areas that the person who spoke first is deficient and you disagree with. Meaning you have to disagree with the person you agree with, one way or another. So, okay, I agree with all this, but this I disagree with. But what if I don't want to? What if I agree with everything? No, you can't. You have to disagree, right? So with that said, when it comes to definitions, don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating things. If it's overcomplicated, you've gone too far. Because the Quran, Islam is meant to be understood by everyone. Everyone. Right? Allah is one. He's not three. That is understandable by a child. But the Trinity, right? Even the top preachers and scholars of the faith don't understand. They have different ways, like, this and that, you have to have faith in all this. No, if it's overcomplicated, it's not part of the religion. And the scholars said, while definitions are important, we are not going to waste our time over defining definitions and arguing about definitions. We're not going to do that. If there's deficiency in my definition, fine, whatever. I'm going on to something more important, right? So don't fall into the trap of academia that overcomplicates everything. It's a lot of things aren't complicated. Allah didn't make this world to be super complicated. That's not the point. The point is this world is simple, it's self-running, so that you can spend your time worshiping Allah. That's the way it works. All right. So I thought I'd just comment on that. The subject matter. Right. So there are various chapters that we'll be going through. Now, of course, this isn't the end all be all, but these are the primary chapters, so to speak, that Sheikh Farhan summarized into conveniently short chapters that gets to the crux and the essence. I will try and expand on that in ways that are relevant to our current times and our current conversations, right? And so I try my best to hear certain criticisms that non-Muslims have in terms of the approach of Muslims towards the Quran, and try to present that to you all so that we're able to engage and we're equipped with that. The purpose of studying the sciences of the Quran is to understand the final revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly in the light of how the Prophet ﷺ, his companions and their students understood it. As we were talking about throughout today, if the only thing you come out with is being able to quote what the companions and the Prophet and the early generations said about these verses, you haven't come out with much. You have to learn how it impacted them. Right? The Quran made them who they were, but they didn't make them who they were because they had a large breadth of knowledge that they can just muster up at any time, but rather their application of it. Now, where it's important to ask the question is when we say we understand the Quran in light of how the Prophet, the companions, and the early generation of Muslims understood it, what does that mean? You'll hear this phrase over and over again in Islamic discourse, right? فهم الكتاب Quran and Sunnah بفهم سلف الأمة. We understand the Quran and Sunnah the same way that the first three generations of Muslims understood it. This is kind of a slogan in Islamic discourse. What does that mean? Any Salafis here? Yeah, I'm just teasing. If you are one, it's okay. Right here? Yeah, look. You're getting all defensive, man. Own up to it. Don't shy away. This isn't. I love Sheikh Ibn Baz too, and Ibn Uthaymeen. I learned a lot from them. All right. So this isn't a place where you hide, man. This is a place where you come out, and that's a long story, right? It's a long conversation, but an important one. We could have it. Maybe we could have a different time. What does that mean? That slogan?
I think that's the understand. But the length of time is not complicated.
Okay, but when we say if someone were to say I understand the Quran, or I seek to understand the Quran the same way that the companions understood it, what does that mean?
Well, like you were saying before, they understood it as something that had the solution to all of their problems in life. It wasn't just a book sitting on a shelf. This was
Be more specific. If I come to a verse, like, I'm gonna take a verse, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and I am adamant that I want to understand this verse the same way the companions understood it. What does that mean?
They're hoping to make the same transformation.
No, before we get into kind of the deeper side of it, I'm just start at the first step of understanding it. Rama? I'm not asking for a little, I'm asking for the principle here. What does that principle mean? This attachment to the Salaf. What is that? Salma?
To be able to completely understand the setting, the surroundings of why this spectrum is really well.
Okay, I don't think I'm asking, I don't think my question is clear in terms of what I'm trying to get out of it. You have groups of Muslims who created a slogan and that pretty much defines how they approach understanding the faith. And that is this hardcore loyalty to understanding what Allah says based on what the companions say. All right. And so you'll find things like we don't have room to, I guess basically what that translates into is that we don't have room to navigate beyond what the companions say.
We put problems that sometimes in head. So if you think that bad, then maybe you cannot solve a problem in the days.
Okay. If you think like that, maybe you cannot solve problems today because it's completely different times, right? Now, I'm going to be very fair here. It's not just Salafis who use this slogan. You have across the Islamic scholarship, the slogan is very much used. And so we don't have a problem with the slogan. Our question is, what does that mean though? What is the proper application of that? Because here, this is where people start to create variety, right? Some people become disconnected from reality as a result of this slogan. They see it as, I have to even look the same way companions look, right? So they'll be walking around Spectrum Mall, and I've seen this before. They'll be walking around in Nordstrom, right? Spectrum Mall, wearing a thobe and a kufiye. In Spectrum Mall, right? And they're saying, I'm following the Sunnah. Is it though? See? Does it make more sense now where I'm coming from? What does it mean to understand the Quran in light of how the Prophet, companions, and their students understood it? If we don't understand this properly, it can lead to a type of religiosity that is shallow, that we're talking about before. All right. So think about it, and we'll resume next week with this, inshallah. All right. وإياكم. صلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه.
No, no, I'm just. Sorry. I'll be right. Okay, you can
If when you're in when brother if when there is and or when that's all. Yeah.
So, okay, you go say, I'm gonna say, you go say, like,
No, on the team, team is a economy. You're right, you're right.
The next letter.
Team, yeah. And that's it. If I would have found all that is. It's perfectly putting in heavy. It's part of the part of the word. So this is not like saying. Part of the word. These are both. What the year? We do it. That's one wrong.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is it El Sinatun or S Sinatun? Is it a Qamar or a Shams?
What?
El Sinatun or S Sinatun?
L-sinatun,
El Sinatun.
the tongue, right?
Yeah.
L-sinatun.
So is it just in this case, or the Sin is not a Sin is a Qamar letter, not a Shams letter?
It's not about the scene, it's about the land.
It's not a definite mark.
We're not looking at the scene, we're looking at the land. first.
Yeah.
Like if you add alif lam, it would be L.
Yeah.
L. Yeah, L-sinatun. L.
Oh, you're looking at the land, not the.
Sorry. We're looking at the hamza here. The alif lam, it starts with alif lam, but the alif lam is not the L of the word.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
the alif, we're looking at the hamza. The alif lam is not the alif lam that gets added to the beginning of the word.
So it's not, if there was a regular alif lam, then you. That's not true. What's singular? Okay, what's plural? No problem. And then the do. مثنى. مثنى. Do. Female is مؤنث. For do, مثنى. Mean, wow. No, I don't know what they're doing. مثنى. Mean, noon. مثنى. What is status called in Arabic? For female, feminine,
What about third person?
third person, Jamar. So which third person? Oh, that's from start.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's tonight's problem.
What did he ask you?
He asked me third person. That's for, we need to know that for start tomorrow.
Tomorrow's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Stop this one.
Start tomorrow.
Oh.
Even though.
Yeah. And then we have to know how to do it.
Yes, yeah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Have any of the previous first year students ever told you about my first quiz? Be honest. No? No? No one's ever said anything?
I didn't know where since I asked.
No one said you couldn't. So in the past, I've done one of the following three things, depending on which year it was. I've either told them, hey, prepare for a test and not had a test on that day. But everyone, studied. The goal was accomplished. Or I told them to prepare for a test and I gave them a test and then I waited till the end of class when everyone turned it in. And once everyone turned it in, I just took the stack and threw it in the trash. I've done all of these. But once again, the goal was accomplished. Everyone studied, or those that were going to study, studied. And then there were the years where I actually gave them a test and did. It's the rotation of that year. I'm just telling you. I'm just being honest. I remember one of the years that I took them all and I threw them in the trash. A few students got upset. I'm like, what are you upset about? What exactly are you upset about? Did you come to learn Arabic? They're like, yes. I was like, did you study? They're like, yes. I was like, so what difference does this piece of paper make? Okay. My hope is that you learn some Arabic. Okay. My hope is that, I don't know, seminar started on Tuesday, right? Since then, hypothetically, hopefully no one quits, but from last Tuesday to this Monday, hypothetically, if someone to walk out and never to walk into this room again, my hope is they know a little more Arabic than they knew last week. My hope. It's pretty simple, honestly. I used to try to teach some class on the day of quizzes because I value my class time a lot. But I feel like students are very easily distracted and they're like trying to pay attention to what I'm saying and also studying on the side. So I'm not gonna try to teach today. But really quickly, what I'll do is I'll give you the quiz. I'll walk out. When you finish, turn it into Sister Sarah at the front. When you finish, turn it into Sister Sarah at the front. Make sense? Right? I'll give it to you. You know what I'll do is actually I'll leave it up here. When you're ready to take it, just grab a copy. Why I say that is if you want 10 or 15 minutes to study, then that's yours. Just technically try to be done by 11:30. But if you go to 11:45, 12, just before you leave, drop it off at Sister Sarah. Good. Don't stress out about it. Well, I don't stress out about it. Like it's not. Like my goal is that you learn more Arabic. As every day you come to class, you grow as a person. You learn more Arabic. Okay. If you don't do well on it, or because you didn't study, because you're struggling, inshallah, over time you keep putting in the work. Sometimes the words that you remember the most, or sometimes the words that you'll never mess up on, is the ones that you initially made a mistake on. That makes sense. Because then you kind of tend to remember it. Like I made a mistake on this word, I'll remember it, and you tend to never forget. So if you don't do well, then there's always 2025. But don't stress out about it, inshallah. Okay. Things that you should know. Once again, I'm like the easiest teacher when it comes to giving tests, okay, guys. But like, what did I put on this? So vocab chapter 1 and 2, all of it's on it, all of it. I don't think I left out a word. I don't think I left out a word. Okay, both boxes. Okay. Body parts is on it. Body parts is on it. Body parts is only one word, right? No plurals. Right. That third box is not on it. Feminine, because the Arab said so, it's not on it. So for all of you that didn't memorize it, don't try to cram it right now. There's no purpose. It's not on. Okay? We covered a lot in terms, not a lot, but we covered a lot of introductory stuff, like words in Arabic can be divided into 3 categories. There are 2 types of sentences in Arabic. Masculine, feminine, just what the names are, plural, singular, dual, plural, and then the last thing I ended with. So one of those questions is on. it, and then the last thing I ended with on Thursday was status. Marfu'un, mansubun, majrurun. You guys remember that? Yeah. Yes. Qalamun, qalaman, qalamin. Yeah. And then we made stuff dual. Yeah. Kitabani, kitabaini. The alif noon indicates raf'un or marfu'un, and the ya noon indicates mansubun and majrurun. Yes? Yeah, good, because that's not on it. See, you reviewed. See, we just got the review out of it, right? The last thing that is on it, and that's why it's important that you ask that question, is the pronouns. The pronouns are on it. I gave the English, and you have to put the appropriate Arabic pronoun. Don't put your pronouns. I don't really care about your pronouns. Okay? I think I know them. I hope I know them. But right, I gave you the English, right? I tried to be as specific as possible, right? If I say I, doesn't matter if you're male or female, it's gonna be the same pronoun, okay? But if I say, for example, if I say all of them, right? First of all, is that first, second, or third person? That's third person, okay? All of them. what should your response be? If I just say all of them and I don't say anything else, hum. But if I say all of them and I put in parentheses female, then it should be hunna. Clear, right? Both of them, is that second or third person? Third person. If I say both of them, what should your response be? Huma. It doesn't matter if it's male or female. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, pretty straightforward. That's all that's on it. That's all that's on it. Okay. For those of you online, I think Sister Sarah or myself will upload it onto Sycamore. You guys have access to Sycamore? You guys know what Sycamore is? Yeah. We'll upload it onto Sycamore. What time is it? In about the next 15 minutes. In about the next 15 minutes, right? For those of you online, what I ask is that you print it out. And I understand that sometimes that can be a little challenging, but you print it out, you obviously fill in the answers, and then you either like use one of those apps that scan it. I don't think anyone has a scanner at this point, but use one of those apps that scans it, or just take very good photos of it, right? And email it back to me. And if any of you that are online plan on coming in person this week, just because you're kind of like switching between online and in person, then also bring an in-person copy. It's just much easier to correct the actual physical copy than the photos or the scanned copies. Ronnie, you had a question?
If we don't have a printer, can we just do it like on an iPad or something and then upload that?
You can. I've allowed that. Just do your absolute best to try to make sure that it's clear. Right? Also, for those of you, please, like, have mercy on my eyes. Have mercy on my eyes. The hieroglyphics. Once again, I'm lenient, but try. But try your best, inshallah. Hold on. Oh, the last thing. Social hour all of a sudden. I'm not done. For those of you online, once again, I'm not gonna. For those of you in person, I kind of expect you to take it first. Okay. Let me tell you what happens. Let me tell you what happens over the course of the year. Okay. Let me tell you what happens over the course of the year. Okay. From the first week, it's very clear that there are students who are in person and there are students who are online, and there are students basically who watch the recorded videos because of every single situation. Right? There are those that can make it in person. There are those that can only be online. And there are those that can only watch the recorded videos. Okay. What happens over time, right, is the in-person students, they say, oh, today's an exam. I won't come in because I know what Sheikh Ahmed does. He uploads the quiz onto Sycamore. And if I wait till it's uploaded onto Sycamore, then I'll technically have more time to take it, right? Because you can take it. If you're an online student, if you turn it in tomorrow or the next day, I'm not going to start chasing you. Okay, because like you came here to learn Arabic. I'm not going to chase you. I'm personally, maybe the other teachers don't. I'm just personally don't have the time, or neither do I care to chase you about an exam. Okay, it's a self-assessment to see how you're doing in class, right? And also to kind of show me where you're at, so I can figure out what you need improvement, right? Also in the past, and I'll just be honest, since I was like, oh, if I take it home and technically I can open my book and I can take the exam that way. And I didn't lose anything. Okay. I didn't waste my time. It's just, it is what it is, right? It's very different. It's very different. I'm not encouraged. I'm just saying it's very different than when you go to college or high school, right? Hopefully the idea here is you're here to benefit yourself and to improve and to learn Arabic and to understand the Quran, right? So if someone cheats, I'm not going to go and chase them. I did have 3 students like a few years ago, like I think it was like second. It was like 3 years ago, right? Like you had to I gave them English and you had to translate it into Arabic, okay? And like 3 people made the same exact mistakes from the first page of the test to the last page of the test. And I'm like, dude, you cheated. You didn't even try. Like you didn't even try to cheat well. Like that's offensive. I took offense to that. And I was like, no, that's not going to fly. Like if you could cheat, at least cheat with ihsan. You know what I'm saying? Like that's offensive to me. Like, you think I'm that dumb? Okay. So like this whole idea of like, oh, I can take it home and no. You're here to benefit yourself, inshallah. Okay. I would suggest for those of you that are in person, continue to come in person. There are those once in a while situations. Where, you know, their exam came and you completely forgot about it because, you know, you had to attend a wedding and the wedding was 5 days during the week. I mean, Wednesday through Sunday, you know, or whatever it was, your dog died or something. Yeah, I mean, something happened, right? And you forgot about it and you're not prepared. Just come to me and say, "Yeah, I just need one more day. I just need one more day. Can I take it tomorrow?" I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say no. I'm not cruel. Okay. But if it's a consistent thing with you, like every single quiz, like, Sheikh, I need one more day. I need one more day. There's never going to be a time I'm going to say no. There's never going to be a time I'm going to say no. But it's a very clear indication that you're struggling with time management and you need to get your life together. Does that make sense? I'm never going to be like, oh no, you have to take it now. That's painful for me because I'm going to have to correct that test that has a whole bunch of mistakes, right? And I have limited red ink. You know, I have to constantly every year steal my daughter's red pens. Like, Baba, our red pen. Like, yeah, for students that make so many mistakes. What can I do? Okay, so try your best. Once again, if we come upon a quiz in a month or 2 months, whatever, you're not ready, like, but you know that, hey, generally you study well and this and that, and you've been trying your best. And it just happened to be a difficult week. You had exams at college or high school or whatever, and just life was coming down at you. Just tell me, hey, Sheikh, I need one more day. Can I turn it in a couple of days? I promise I'll turn it in. But don't make it a habit. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Yes. I'm trying to be reasonable. I'm trying to be as reasonable as possible because it's not about I want all of you to pass. You're understanding that wrong, but it's because I want all of you to benefit. There are people who don't pass, but they benefit. Does that make sense? There are people who don't pass, but they benefit. I'm not being lenient because I want all of you to pass. I'm being lenient because I want all of you to benefit. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I am done with my parental rant. Okay, good. Who's ready? Who should I give it to now? Yeah.
We need to put all the vowels in vocab.
Put as much as you can. Put as much as you can. Put as much as you can. Who's ready? Sorry, that one.
Yes.
They do. Yeah. 4 seconds. No. Yeah. Go home. Put it in. You're done. You're done. Put it in.
You said take it to the front.
Yeah, so
You want us to put our names on it?
please. I'm sorry, we're not. Wait. They're not safe. Oh, I see. Give me a second. Can you go into not this room, not the small one, but the next one? I think there's a stapler. No, okay, I got it. Are they ready? Or no? The three? For those of you online, like I said, give me a few minutes and then it will be posted. Let's give it about 15 minutes, inshallah, onto Sycamore. But I'm gonna end the stream right now. Assalamu alaikum.